The restaurant was too expensive for someone like me. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting prisms of light across white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. I fidgeted with the hem of my black dress, the nicest one I owned, though it had seen better days, and checked my phone again. 40 minutes late. The waiter had already asked twice if I wanted to order, his polite smile thinning each time I requested, just 5 more minutes. I should never have agreed to this blind date. My roommate Liv had insisted I needed to get back out there. After 6 months of drowning myself in work since the breakup with Daniel, he'll be perfect for you, she'd promised. Super nice. Just started at my company. Not much money yet, but he's ambitious. The weight of stares from nearby tables pressed against my skin. Alone at a table for 2 on a Friday night, nursing the cheapest glass of wine on the menu, stretching it out sip by agonizing sip. My cheeks burned. Soon I'd finish this glass and slink out, another dating disaster to add to my collection. Sorry I'm late. The voice came from behind, deep and smooth as aged whiskey. I turned, ready with a forced smile and a practiced, no problem, but the words died in my throat. The man standing there was nothing like the LinkedIn photo Liv had shown me. This wasn't a junior account manager at a marketing firm. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, tailored to broad shoulders that tapered to a narrow waist. Dark hair, styled with just enough product to look intentional, but not fussy. And his eyes, deep brown, almost black in the restaurant's dim lighting, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You're not Todd," I blurted, immediately wishing I could dissolve into the expensive carpet. One corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been amusement. "No, I'm not." He sat down across from me without waiting for an invitation, motioning to the waiter who materialized instantly at his side. "Bring us the 15 Brunello and the chef's tasting menu." He didn't look at the menu or ask the price. The waiter bowed, and hurried away. "There's been a mistake," I said, gathering my purse. "I'm waiting for someone else, who appears to have stood you up." His gaze swept over me, not leering but assessing. "I'm Alessandro. And you are?" "Emma," I answered automatically, then cursed myself for giving my real name to a stranger. "Emma," he repeated, like he was tasting the syllables. "I saw you sitting alone. You looked—" He paused, considering. Interesting, I echoed. That's not usually what men say when they're trying to pick up women. His smile widened fractionally. "I'm not trying to pick you up, Emma. I'm having dinner with you." The certainty in his voice should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself sinking back into my chair as the waiter returned with a bottle of wine that I was certain cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Alessandro nodded permission, and the waiter poured a taste for him. He didn't even look at it, just gestured toward my glass. The waiter filled it, then his. "2 unexpected meetings," Alessandro said, raising his glass. Against my better judgment, I clinked mine against it. The wine was rich and complex, nothing like the cheap glass I'd been nursing. "So, what do you do, Alessandro?" I tried to sound casual, as though I regularly had dinner with mysterious, commanding strangers. "Import-export, primarily," he said, the words rolling off his tongue with a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Mediterranean, maybe. Family business. And you?" "I work at Hudson Gallery downtown." I didn't mention that I was just the assistant office manager, not a curator or artist. "Nothing glamorous. Art," he said thoughtfully. "Do you have a favorite period?" The conversation flowed more easily than I expected, jumping from Renaissance painters to modern architecture to my brief stint in art school, before dropping out when money ran dry. Alessandro spoke with confidence about everything, occasionally dropping comments that hinted at extensive travel, important connections. Yet he seemed genuinely interested in my opinions, leaning forward slightly when I spoke, his eyes never leaving my face. The food arrived in a parade of small, exquisite dishes, seared scallops with brown butter, handmade pasta with black truffles, Wagyu beef so tender it melted on my tongue. Each bite was a revelation, and the wine kept flowing, warming my blood and loosening my usual reserve. "Why me?" I asked finally, the question that had been simmering since he sat down. "There must be a dozen beautiful women here tonight." Alessandro set down his glass, studying me. "Beauty is common. You have something more interesting." His eyes traced the contours of my face. "You're observing everything, cataloging details, artist's eyes, and you're afraid." "I'm not afraid," I protested. "Not of me," he clarified. "Of life disappointing you again. I saw it in how you held yourself, waiting for your date who never came, expecting the letdown. His voice softened fractionally. You've grown accustomed to disappointment. The accuracy of his assessment felt like a physical touch, making me shiver. I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I finished my wine, suddenly needing the liquid courage. You're very presumptuous. I'm very right, he countered without arrogance, just certainty. Outside, rain had started to fall, drumming against the windows and blurring the lights of passing cars. The restaurant had nearly emptied, and I realized with a start that we'd been talking for hours. I should go, I said reluctantly, reaching for my purse. It's late. I'll drive you home. It wasn't a question. A flutter of unease mixed with something more dangerous, anticipation, stirred in my stomach. That's not necessary. I can call a cab. In this rain? At this hour? He shook his head once. I insist. Before I could argue further, he stood and held out his hand. I hesitated only a moment before placing my palm against his. His skin was warm and slightly calloused. Not the soft hands I'd expected from someone so polished. He helped me to my feet, then placed his hand at the small of my back, guiding me toward the door. The pressure was light, but unmistakably possessive. The maitre d' handed Alessandro an umbrella without being asked. Outside, the rain fell in sheets, silvery in the streetlights. Alessandro opened the umbrella and drew me close against his side, his arm around my waist as he guided me to the curb. A black SUV with tinted windows glided to a stop in front of us. A large man emerged from the driver's side, opening the rear door without a word. He wore an earpiece and a jacket that didn't quite conceal the bulge of what I was certain was a gun. I froze. Who are you, really? Alessandro's arm tightened slightly around me. Someone who wants to see you again. Get in, Emma. You're getting wet. I should have walked away. Should have run. Instead, I let him usher me into the back of the vehicle, the leather seats butter soft against my bare legs. Alessandro slid in beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, with notes of sandalwood and amber. The driver closed the door and returned to his seat. The interior was separated by a partition, giving us privacy. As the car pulled away from the curb, I gave Alessandro my address, trying to ignore the alarm bells ringing in my head. Tomorrow night, Alessandro said as the city lights played across his face. Dinner again? I can't. I lied. I have plans. His eyes gleamed in the darkness. Cancel them. My spine stiffened. I don't take orders from men I just met. Something dangerous flickered across his face. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Then his expression softened. Please. Have dinner with me tomorrow. The unexpected politeness disarmed me. I don't even know your last name. Russo. Alessandro Russo. The name meant nothing to me. Fine. Tomorrow. But I choose the restaurant. Somewhere normal. His lips curved in that almost smile. As you wish. I'll pick you up at 7. When the car stopped in front of my apartment building, a shabby walk-up in a neighborhood that had been promising to gentrify for years, I expected Alessandro to recoil. Instead, he stepped out and walked me to the door, his hand returning to the small of my back. The driver remained by the vehicle, scanning the street with practiced vigilance. Good night, Emma, Alessandro said at my door, his voice low. He leaned in slowly, deliberately, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he brushed his lips against my cheek, his breath warm against my skin. Until tomorrow. I watched from my window as the SUV pulled away, my heart hammering in my chest. What had just happened? Who was this man? The evening felt dreamlike, surreal. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto my bed, mind racing. My phone chimed with a text from Liv. How was Todd? I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Todd, whoever he was, had never shown up. Instead, I'd spent the evening with a man who commanded rooms without raising his voice, who had a driver with a gun, who looked at me like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. He wasn't what I expected, I typed finally. I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of dark eyes and hands that guided rather than asked. Morning brought clarity, and with it, caution. I Googled Alessandro Russo over coffee, and found nothing definitive. Some social media profiles that didn't match the man I'd met, business listings for various Russos around the country. If he was as wealthy as he seemed, his digital footprint was surprisingly minimal. I spent the day restless, alternating between anticipation and anxiety. By 6, I'd changed outfits 5 times, finally settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out my eyes. If we were going to a normal restaurant at my insistence, I would dress normally. At precisely 7, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Yes? I answered. Miss Emma, your car is waiting downstairs. A man's voice, not Alessandro's. My car? I moved to the window and peered down. The same black SUV from last night idled at the curb, the driver standing beside it. Mr. Russo sent me to collect you. There's been a change of plans. My stomach nodded. What kind of change? Where's Alessandro? He had unexpected business to attend to. He asks that you trust him and come with me. He'll explain everything. Every instinct screamed danger. Every romantic comedy warned about getting into cars with strangers. And yet, I found myself grabbing my purse and jacket, locking my apartment behind me. The driver opened the door for me, his face impassive. The back seat was empty. No Alessandro waiting. My pulse quickened with uncertainty as we pulled away from the curb. Where are we going? I asked as we headed toward the highway. The airport, miss. The airport? I echoed, alarmed. I don't have a passport with me. I can't leave the country. The driver's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. You won't need one for a domestic flight. Flight? I never agreed to get on a plane. Panic rose in my throat. What was I doing? I'd known this man for one evening, and now I was in a car being taken to an airport? Stop the car. I want to get out. Mr. Russo was very clear about bringing you to him, miss. The subtle threat beneath his polite words sent a chill through me. I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, it buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Emma, I apologize for the change of plans. Important business required my attention in Miami. I've sent my plane for you. 2 hours, dinner on the beach, and you'll be home tonight if that's what you wish, please. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. This was madness. This was the beginning of a true crime documentary. And yet, I found myself typing, your plane. The response came immediately, nothing elaborate, just a Gulf Stream. The pilot has filed all the necessary paperwork. All you need to do is arrive. Just a Gulf Stream. As though private jets were commonplace. As though this were a normal second date. I should tell the driver to take me home. I should block this number and forget Alessandro Russo existed. Instead, I texted, see you in Miami. As the SUV approached a private airfield, I caught sight of the jet waiting on the tarmac, gleaming white against the darkening sky. My heart raced as the reality of what I was doing finally hit me. I wasn't just having dinner with a mysterious stranger anymore. I was flying to another city with a man I didn't know, who had resources I couldn't comprehend, and motives I couldn't fathom. And the most terrifying part, despite every warning bell, every red flag, I couldn't deny the thrill coursing through my veins. I was about to step onto a private jet, sent by a man who looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. Danger had never felt so seductive. The Gulfstream's interior was a revelation of luxury. Creamy leather seats, polished wood paneling, and ambient lighting that cast a warm glow over everything. A flight attendant greeted me with practiced deference, taking my jacket and guiding me to a seat. Miss Walker, welcome aboard. Mr. Russo asked me to ensure your comfort during the flight. Would you prefer champagne or perhaps something stronger? I hadn't told Alessandro my last name. Champagne, I managed, sinking into a seat that cradled me like a lover. How did you know my last name? Her smile never faltered. Mr. Russo provided your information for the flight manifest. She poured champagne into a flute and handed it to me. We'll be taking off shortly. The flight to Miami is approximately 2 hours. 2 hours there, 2 hours back, plus however long this surreal dinner would take. I'd be lucky to get home by 2 a.m., and I had work tomorrow. The rational part of my brain was screaming about the insanity of this situation, but that voice grew fainter with each bubble that burst on my tongue. The takeoff was smoother than any commercial flight I'd experienced. Through the window, I watched the city lights recede, transforming into a glittering tapestry below. The champagne warmed my blood, making everything seem dreamlike and distant. Have you worked for Mr. Russo long? I asked the attendant when she returned to check on me. I work for the charter company, Miss Walker, she replied smoothly, though Mr. Russo is a frequent client. And does he often fly women to different cities for dinner? Something flickered behind her professional smile. Caution, perhaps. I couldn't say, miss. The message was clear. Don't ask questions about Alessandro Russo. I spent the remainder of the flight alternating between exhilaration and panic. What did this man want from me? Why go to such extravagant lengths for someone he'd just met? The champagne dulled my anxiety, but couldn't erase it entirely. As we began our descent into Miami, my phone chimed with another text. Alessandro. Almost here. Looking forward to seeing you. The simple message shouldn't have made my pulse quicken, but it did. I touched up my makeup using a compact mirror, grateful I'd chosen waterproof mascara as the Florida humidity hit me like a wall when I stepped off the plane. He was waiting on the tarmac, leaning against another black SUV. The sight of him knocked the air from my lungs. Gone was the formal suit from last night, replaced by dark trousers and a white linen shirt, open at the collar to reveal a triangle of tanned skin. His hair was slightly tousled by the evening breeze, making him look more approachable, but no less commanding. When he saw me, his eyes lit with something that might have been pleasure or possession. I couldn't tell which, and the distinction suddenly seemed important. "You came," he said simply, pushing away from the car and walking toward me. "You sent a private jet," I countered. "That's a difficult invitation to decline." His lips curved in that almost smile. "I'm a difficult man to say no to." He reached for my hand, bringing it to his lips in an old-world gesture that should have seemed affected, but instead sent heat spiraling through me. "Thank you for trusting me. I haven't decided if that's trust or poor judgment yet." Alessandro laughed, a rich sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Perhaps both." He placed his hand at the small of my back, that same possessive gesture from last night, and guided me toward the waiting car. "I have a reservation at a place on the water. Private, excellent seafood." The driver held the door, and I slid into the back seat, Alessandro following. This vehicle was even more luxurious than last night's, with buttery leather and what looked like a fully stocked bar in a hidden compartment. "Your business must be doing well," I remarked as we pulled away from the airfield. "Import-export, you said?" "Among other ventures." His gaze was heavy-lidded, assessing. "Does it bother you? The money?" I considered lying, then decided against it. "It intimidates me," I admitted. "All of this, the private jet, the cars, the restaurant last night, it's not my world." "It could be," he said quietly. The simple statement hung between us, laden with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Instead, I looked out the window at the Miami streets, palm trees silhouetted against a sunset sky. The restaurant was on a private stretch of beach, the dining area open to the gentle evening breeze, with candlelit tables set far apart for privacy. The maitre d' greeted Alessandro by name and led us to a secluded table overlooking the ocean. The sound of waves lapping at the shore provided a soothing backdrop to the soft Latin jazz playing from hidden speakers. "You've been here before," I noted, as Alessandro ordered in fluent Spanish without glancing at the menu. "I have properties in Miami," he replied, as casually as someone might mention having a storage unit. "I come here often. Properties, plural, a private jet, a security detail." I leaned forward, emboldened by the champagne from the flight and the absurdity of my situation. "Who are you, Alessandro Russo?" "Really?" He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable in the candlelight. "Would the truth frighten you away?" "Probably," I admitted. "But I think I deserve it, considering I just flew across the country with a man I barely know." He nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. "My family has interests in various businesses throughout the East Coast and Europe: real estate, shipping, private banking, security." He took a sip of his wine. "Some of these businesses operate in gray areas. Some attract attention from competitors and law enforcement." My mouth went dry. "You're saying you're what? A mobster?" Alessandro's expression hardened fractionally. "I'm saying my family has power, wealth, and enemies. We protect our interests however necessary." The implication hung heavy in the salt-laden air between us. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt a twisted thrill, as if I'd discovered a secret few were privileged to know. "And last night?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the waves. "Was I just in the right place at the wrong time?" His expression softened. "You were exactly where you needed to be." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "When I saw you sitting there, waiting for someone who didn't deserve you, something clicked." His thumb traced circles on my palm, each movement sending sparks up my arm. "I don't believe in coincidence, Emma. I believe in taking what's meant to be yours." Warning bells clamored in my mind, but his touch drowned them out. "I'm not anyone's to take, no?" His smile was predatory now, confident. "Then why are you here?" Before I could answer, our food arrived. A feast of local seafood, fresh and perfectly prepared. The conversation shifted to safer topics. My childhood in a small Midwest town, my abandoned dreams of becoming an artist, my struggle to find meaning in a city that constantly made me feel small and insignificant. Alessandro listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed he was actually paying attention. In turn, he shared carefully edited stories of growing up in a powerful family, the weight of expectations, the isolation that came with his position. He spoke of art he'd collected, places he'd visited, but never specific details about his business or the extent of his wealth and influence. By the time dessert arrived, a decadent key lime confection paired with aged rum, I was both more comfortable with Alessandro and more mystified by him. The alcohol and the romance of the setting had lowered my defenses, making it difficult to remember why I should keep my distance. "Walk with me," he said after the plates were cleared away. It wasn't a question, but his eyes sought permission. I nodded, and he helped me to my feet, his hand once again finding the small of my back as he guided me from the restaurant to the private beach beyond. We slipped off our shoes at the edge of the sand, the grain still warm from the day's heat. The night was velvet dark, stars scattered overhead like diamond dust, the ocean a rhythmic whisper against the shore. Alessandro kept me close, his arm around my waist. We walked in silence for a time, the intimacy of the moment making words seem superfluous. "I have a confession," he said finally, stopping to face me. The moonlight carved shadows beneath his cheekbones, making him look both angelic and dangerous. "I knew who you were before last night." My body tensed. "What do you mean?" "Your roommate, Olivia. Her company recently began handling social media for one of my legitimate businesses." His eyes never left mine. "I saw your picture on her Instagram. You were at some gallery opening, laughing, your head thrown back. I asked about you." A cold trickle of unease slithered down my spine. "You orchestrated our meeting? What about Todd?" "There was never any Todd," Alessandro admitted. "I asked Olivia to suggest a blind date, to tell you he'd meet you at that restaurant. I knew you'd be alone, waiting." The romantic evening crystallized into something darker. "You manipulated me. Had your employee lied to me, I created an opportunity," he countered, unapologetic. "Would you have agreed to meet me if you knew who I was? What I am?" "No," I whispered, the truth of it bitter on my tongue. "Then don't fault me for knowing what I want and pursuing it." His hand came up to cut my cheek, his touch gentle despite the steel in his voice. "And I want you, Emma." I should have pulled away, should have demanded he take me back to the airport. Fly me home. Never contact me again. Instead, I stood frozen, caught between fear and a desire so powerful it terrified me. "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women from your world. I have no interest in vapid beauty or social connections," Alessandro said, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "I've watched you for weeks. The way you lose yourself looking at art. How you help that homeless man outside your building even though you can barely pay your own rent. Your loyalty to friends who don't deserve it." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "You're real, Emma. Authentic in a way few people in my life have ever been." The idea that this powerful, dangerous man had been observing me, studying me like a rare specimen, should have horrified me. Instead, it made me feel seen in a way I never had before. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice unsteady. "Now, I court you properly." His eyes darkened with intent. "I show you what life could be like with me. And you decide if you can accept what I am, what being with me would mean. And if I say no?" Something flashed across his face. Anger, frustration, determination. Before his features settled into careful neutrality. "I'm not accustomed to hearing that word, Emma. But for you, I would try to respect it. Try." The ambiguity of that single word hung between us. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Alessandro checked it, his expression hardening as he read the message. "We need to go," he said, all warmth vanishing from his voice. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Business." He was already guiding me back toward the restaurant, his grip on my waist firmer than before, the kind that can't wait. The driver was waiting with the SUV, engine running. Alessandro helped me inside, then spoke rapidly to the driver in Italian, too fast for me to catch even if I'd understood the language. The urgency in his tone needed no translation. "Is everything okay?" I asked as we pulled away, tires spitting gravel. "Nothing for you to worry about." Alessandro took my hand, his thumb rubbing circles against my palm, in what seemed like an unconscious gesture. But our evening needs to end earlier than I'd planned. The drive back to the airport was tense, Alessandro alternating between checking his phone and staring out the window, his jaw tight. The easy conversation from dinner had evaporated, replaced by a heavy silence that made my skin prickle with unease. At the airport, the Gulfstream waited, engines already whining in preparation for takeoff. Alessandro walked me to the stairs, his hand at the small of my back guiding rather than suggesting. I'm sorry about this, he said, stopping at the foot of the stairs. It wasn't how I planned our evening to end. It's fine, I lied, unsure what else to say. The romantic spell of the beach had broken, revealing the harsh reality of who this man was. Someone whose business could derail plans in an instant, whose life operated on a different plane than mine. Alessandro stepped closer, one hand sliding to the nape of my neck. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, his eyes searching mine. Then he leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a kiss that started gentle but quickly turned hungry, possessive. I melted against him despite myself, my hands clutching at his shirt as heat bloomed low in my belly. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark with desire and something else, a fierce intensity that made me shiver. Safe travels, Emma. His voice was rough around the edges. Dream of me. I climbed the stairs on unsteady legs, acutely aware of his eyes on me until I disappeared into the cabin. Through the window, I watched him return to the SUV, already speaking rapidly on his phone. The businessman, or whatever he truly was, once more in control. As the jet taxied for takeoff, I pressed my fingers to my lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss. What was I doing? Getting involved with Alessandro meant stepping into a world I knew nothing about, a world with rules and dangers I couldn't begin to comprehend. And yet, as Miami's lights receded beneath me, I couldn't deny the terrible truth. Part of me was already his. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening in Miami like a film on loop. The private jet, the moonlit beach, Alessandro's confession that he'd orchestrated our meeting, the kiss that still burned on my lips. By dawn, my sheets were a tangled mess, and my thoughts no clearer than they had been at midnight. I stumbled through work the next day in a fog, yawning through inventory logs and emails. Twice my boss asked if I was feeling all right. I blamed it on insomnia, which wasn't entirely a lie. You look like you need this more than me, Liv said, placing a coffee on my desk during her lunch break visit. Her marketing firm was only a few blocks from the gallery. Late night? If she only knew. Something like that, I murmured, taking a grateful sip. Liv perched on the edge of my desk. So about Todd, she at least had the grace to look sheepish. He told me he never made it to the restaurant. Family emergency or something. Did you wait long? The lie came easily. Not too long. I had dinner by myself, then went home. God, I'm so sorry. He seemed reliable. She twisted a strand of hair around her finger. But hey, there's this client party next week. Lots of cute guys from the finance department will be there. You should come. I forced a smile. Maybe. The idea of making small talk with finance bros held zero appeal, especially after... My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Thinking of you. Dinner tonight? I'll come to you this time. My heart performed a complicated gymnastics routine in my chest. Alessandro. I set the phone face down, trying to control my expression. Ooh, who's that? You're blushing, Liv teased, trying to peek at my phone. Nobody, I said too quickly. Just my mom. Her eyebrows shot up in disbelief, but thankfully she didn't press. Whatever you say. Anyway, about this party. I half listened as she detailed the event, my mind elsewhere. Alessandro Russo wanted to see me again. After the abrupt end to our Miami evening, I wasn't sure if he'd follow through on his promise to call. Part of me had hoped he wouldn't. It would make walking away from this dangerous attraction so much easier. Yet here was his message, burning a hole through my phone and my resolve. After Liv left, I stared at the text for a full 5 minutes before responding. I get off work at 6. His reply was immediate. I'll pick you up at 7. Casual attire. That evening, I changed 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft emerald sweater that brought out the green in my hazel eyes. I left my hair loose around my shoulders the way it had been in Miami when he kissed me. The memory made heat bloom across my skin. Precisely at 7, my buzzer rang. I took a steadying breath before answering. Yes? It's Alessandro. No driver this time. No security detail. Just him. I buzzed him in and opened my apartment door, heart hammering as his footsteps approached. When he rounded the corner of the stairwell, the sight of him stole my breath. Gone was the business mogul in tailored suits. Gone was the Miami playboy in linen. Tonight he wore dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, and a leather jacket that hugged broad shoulders. He looked almost normal, if normal men resembled Italian fashion models with dangerous eyes. Emma. My name in his mouth sounded like a caress. He approached slowly, as if giving me time to retreat, then leaned in to press a kiss to my cheek. His scent enveloped me, that same subtle cologne with notes of sandalwood and something darker. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I managed, suddenly awkward in my own doorway. Do you want to come in for a minute? I just need to grab my coat." Alessandro stepped inside, his gaze sweeping my apartment in one assessing look. I saw it through his eyes, the secondhand furniture, the paint-splattered easel in the corner, the mismatched dishes drying on the rack. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Your work?" he asked, moving toward the canvas propped against the wall, an unfinished cityscape in oils, all muted colors and sharp angles. "Just a hobby," I said, grabbing my coat from the closet. "Nothing serious." He studied the painting, his head tilted slightly. "You have talent. The perspective is unusual, melancholy but not without hope." He turned to me. "Why did you abandon it? Art school, I mean." I shrugged, uncomfortable with his insight. "Money, reality, pick your poison." Something flickered in his eyes, understanding or perhaps calculation. "Reality is malleable, Emma, especially with the right resources." Before I could decipher his meaning, he offered me his arm. "Shall we?" I made reservations at a place I think you'll enjoy. To my surprise, Alessandro drove himself, a sleek black Aston Martin that purred like a panther as we navigated through evening traffic. No driver, no security that I could see. It felt almost like a normal date. "Where's your entourage?" I asked, running my fingers over the butter-soft leather of the seat. His lips quirked. "I don't need security for every outing, though they're never far." He glanced at me, his profile sharp against the city lights. "Does it make you more comfortable thinking we're just two people on a date? Is that what this is? A date?" "What would you call it?" I stared out the window, watching raindrops begin to spatter against the glass. "I don't know what to call any of this. The restaurant, Miami, the things you told me on the beach. It doesn't fit into any category, I understand." Alessandro was quiet for a moment, his hand steady on the wheel. "And yet you're here." "I'm here," I echoed, the simple admission feeling like a surrender. The restaurant was a small Italian place tucked away on a side street, with worn wooden tables and candles stuck in wine bottles. Nothing like the opulent establishments of our previous meetings. The hostess greeted Alessandro with a cry of delight, kissing both his cheeks and speaking rapid Italian. He responded in kind, his hand never leaving the small of my back. "Family friend," he explained, as she led us to a secluded corner table. "My father knew her husband in Naples. This place has the most authentic carbonara in the city." Over dinner, which was indeed spectacular, Alessandro seemed determined to keep the conversation light. He asked about my day, told amusing stories about his travels, steered clear of any mention of his business or the abrupt end to our Miami evening. By the time we finished a bottle of Barolo, I'd almost convinced myself this could be normal. Almost. "You're staring," he noted, setting down his espresso cup. "What are you thinking?" "That I don't know which version of you is real," I admitted. "The power broker with private jets and security details, or this," I gestured between us, "the man who knows the owner of a hole-in-the-wall Italian restaurant and talks about art." Alessandro leaned forward, his dark eyes intent on mine. "They're both real, Emma. I contain multitudes, as do you." He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent electricity up my arm. "The question isn't which version is real. It's which version you can live with." The weight of his words settled in my chest. "And if I can't live with either?" A shadow crossed his face. "I think you can. I think that's what frightens you most." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Alessandro checked it, his expression hardening momentarily before he declined the call. "Not tonight," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "Another business emergency?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Nothing that can't wait." He signaled for the check. "Would you like to walk? There's a place nearby I want to show you." Outside, the earlier drizzle had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Alessandro kept me close, his arm around my waist as we walked. The easy conversation from dinner continued, but an undercurrent of tension hummed beneath, a sense of inevitability that made my skin prickle with awareness. He led me to a small gallery I'd never noticed before, nestled between a bookstore and a cafe. The lights were off, but Alessandro produced a key from his pocket. "You have a key to a random art gallery?" I asked, eyebrows raised. That ghost of a smile played across his lips. "Not random. Mine." The gallery was intimate, with polished concrete floors and crisp white walls displaying perhaps 24 paintings. Alessandro flipped a switch, and soft lighting illuminated the space. You own an art gallery. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. A recent acquisition. He guided me further inside. The previous owner was motivated to sell. Something in his tone suggested the circumstances hadn't been entirely above board. I moved from painting to painting. My professional interest piqued despite myself. The collection was eclectic but showed a discerning eye. Emerging artists alongside established names, traditional techniques next to experimental pieces. These are incredible, I admitted, stopping before a large abstract that seemed to capture urban chaos in swirls of crimson and charcoal. How did you... I turned to find Alessandro watching me, his expression intent. What? I enjoy watching you look at art, he said simply. You transform. Heat crept up my neck. I don't know what that means. He stepped closer, into my personal space. It means you forget yourself, your hesitations, your fears, your carefully constructed walls. Another step. You become open, vulnerable. His hand came up to cut my cheek. Beautiful. I should have backed away. Instead, I leaned into his touch, my body betraying my mind's cautions. Alessandro, I want you in my life, Emma. His voice was low, intense. I want to give you everything you've been denied. Security, beauty, freedom to create without worrying about rent or bills or small-minded bosses who don't recognize your talent. The offer hung between us, seductive and terrifying. In exchange for what? His thumb traced my lower lip. Your loyalty. Your trust. Eventually, perhaps your heart. And if I can't give those things, you already are. He murmured, closing the distance between us. Or you wouldn't be here. His kiss was different from the one in Miami. Slower, deeper, more deliberate. My hands found their way to his shoulders, then slid up to tangle in his hair. He tasted of espresso and wine and desire, his body hard against mine as he backed me against the wall, one hand at my waist, the other cradling my head. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Alessandro rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed as if savoring the moment. Come home with me, he said, his voice rough around the edges. 1,000 reasons to refuse tumbled through my mind, but none made it to my lips. Instead, I heard myself say, yes. The drive to his home was a blur of city lights and mounting tension. Alessandro kept one hand on my thigh, a possessive weight that anchored me to the moment, preventing second thoughts. We barely spoke, the air between us charged with anticipation. I expected a penthouse or luxury high-rise, but Alessandro drove us to a brownstone in an exclusive neighborhood, its facade elegant but understated. He used a keypad to open a discreet gate, then guided the Aston Martin into an underground garage where several other vehicles, all expensive, all black, were parked. You live here alone? I asked as he helped me from the car. I have staff, but they don't live in, he replied, leading me to a private elevator. Tonight we won't be disturbed. The elevator opened directly into the main living area, an open concept space with soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture in shades of cream and gray, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Art was everywhere, from sculptures on pedestals to paintings that I recognized as museum-worthy pieces. This is... I struggled to find words adequate to the luxury surrounding me. Home, Alessandro supplied, shrugging off his jacket and dropping it over a chair. He moved to a panel on the wall, pressing buttons that dimmed the lights, and started a fire in a sleek, modern fireplace. Would you like a drink? I shook my head. Liquid courage was the last thing I needed. I was already dangerously close to making decisions I wouldn't be able to unmake. Alessandro approached slowly, his intentions clear in his eyes. Second thoughts? About a dozen, I admitted. But I'm still here. That almost smile played across his lips. Yes, you are. He reached for me, drawing me against him, and I intend to ensure you don't regret it. What followed was a slow, deliberate seduction, Alessandro's hands and mouth learning my body with the same intensity he seemed to apply to everything. He took his time, as if we had all night, all week, all our lives ahead of us, and I let myself be carried away on the tide of sensation, forgetting all the reasons this man was dangerous, remembering only the way he made me feel. Seen, desired, alive. Later, lying in his ridiculously large bed, sheets tangled around our bodies, I traced patterns on his chest and tried not to think about what came next. Alessandro's fingers combed through my hair in lazy, possessive strokes. Stay, he murmured against my temple. Tonight? Tonight. Tomorrow, as long as you want. I propped myself up on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. I have a job, Alessandro. A life. I can't just disappear into yours. A shadow crossed his features. Your job barely pays your rent. Your life consists of working for people who don't value you, dreaming of creating art you never have time to make. The accuracy of his assessment stung. That doesn't mean I can abandon everything to become your, what, mistress, kept woman? Partner, he corrected, his voice hardening slightly. I'm offering you partnership, Emma. A life where you're valued, where your talents are nurtured, where you want for nothing. In your world, I countered. With your rules, your enemies. Alessandro sat up, the sheet pooling at his waist, revealing a torso mapped with scars I'd explored with my fingers and lips, evidence of the violence in his world. Yes, in my world, which has its dangers, but also its protections. His eyes held mine, unflinching. No one would dare touch what belongs to me. That word, belongs, should have sent me running. Instead, it sent a shiver of something dangerously close to desire down my spine. I need time, I said finally. This is a lot. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Time you shall have, but not distance. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone rang, a different tone than before, sharper, more insistent. Alessandro cursed under his breath, reaching for it. This had better be important, he answered, his voice suddenly cold, all traces of the passionate lover gone. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. When? Another pause. Lock it down. No one in or out. I'm on my way. He ended the call and turned to me, conflict evident in his eyes. Let me guess, I said, already reaching for my clothes. Business. I'm sorry. For once, he actually sounded it. There's a situation that requires my immediate attention. I nodded, pulling on my jeans with as much dignity as I could muster. Of course, I'll call a cab. You'll do no such thing. Alessandro was already dressing, his movements efficient. My driver will take you home. I'd take you myself, but it's fine. I cut him off, not wanting to hear the excuses. The magical evening was evaporating, reality intruding like an unwelcome guest. I understand. He crossed to me, cupping my face in his hands. Do you? Because this isn't rejection, Emma. This isn't me choosing business over you. It's me handling a threat so I can return to you without endangering what we're building. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. What are we building, Alessandro? A future, he said simply. One where you never have to doubt your worth or your place again. He kissed me, hard and possessive. Wait for me. 2 days, at most. Then we'll continue this conversation. I wanted to argue, to demand more information, but the urgency in his movements told me this wasn't the time, so I finished dressing in silence, gathering my dignity along with my clothes. As promised, a car was waiting when we reached the garage. Not the Aston, but a black Mercedes with tinted windows, and a driver I recognized from the first night. Alessandro helped me inside, then leaned in for one final kiss. 2 days, he repeated, his eyes holding a promise that made my stomach flip. Then I'll come for you. The way he said it, not, then I'll see you, or then we'll talk, but then I'll come for you, sent a shiver of both anticipation and fear down my spine. As the car pulled away, I watched Alessandro stride toward another vehicle, where 2 men in suits waited. His posture had changed, all traces of the gentle lover replaced by something harder, more dangerous. A reminder of exactly who and what he was, and who and what I'd be accepting if I said yes to his offer. The next 2 days crawled by with excruciating slowness. I moved through my routine like a sleepwalker. Catalog new acquisitions, answer emails, schedule deliveries, while my mind replayed every moment with Alessandro, the weight of his gaze, the feel of his hands, the impossible choice he'd laid before me. Earth to Emma. My boss, Diane, snapped her fingers in front of my face. That's the 3rd time you've zoned out today. What's going on with you? I blinked, forcing myself back to the present. Sorry, just tired. Well, wake up. The Miyazaki collection arrives tomorrow, and I need you focused. She paused, studying me with narrowed eyes. You're not getting sick, are you? Because I can't afford to lose you right before the exhibition. Can't afford to lose me. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 3 years at Hudson Gallery, I was still just an assistant manager making barely enough to cover rent, valued only for my organizational skills rather than my eye for art or my own creative potential. Alessandro's words echoed in my mind. Your job barely pays your rent. Your life consists of working for people who don't value you. I'm fine, I assured Diane, straightening my shoulders. Just didn't sleep well. She nodded, already distracted by her buzzing phone. Good. Oh, and stay late tonight. The caterer for next week's opening needs a final head count. No, please. No acknowledgement that staying late meant another evening sacrifice to a job that led nowhere. I swallowed the bitter retort that rose to my lips and simply nodded. By the time I left the gallery, it was after 8. The night air had a crisp bite to it, and I pulled my jacket tighter as I walked to the subway station, too tired to notice the black SUV idling half a block behind me. It wasn't until I reached my apartment building that I sensed something was different. The homeless man who usually camped in the doorway of the abandoned storefront next door, the one I brought coffee to most mornings, was gone. His shopping cart, his cardboard sign, all vanished as if he'd never existed. Strange, but not alarming. Perhaps he'd found a shelter for the night. I dug in my purse for my keys, momentarily distracted. Ms. Walker. I jumped at the voice, nearly dropping my keys. A tall man in a dark suit stood a few feet away, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. I recognized him as one of Alessandro's security detail. Jesus, you scared me, I gasped, heart hammering. What are you doing here? Mr. Russo sent me to ensure your safety. My safety? I glanced around the empty street. What are you talking about? The man's expression remained impassive. It's not my place to explain. Mr. Russo asked me to give you this. He extended an envelope, thick cream-colored paper with my name written in elegant script. I took it reluctantly. Has he been having me watched? The thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the evening air. I'm just following orders, ma'am. He stepped back, nodding toward the black SUV parked across the street. We'll be nearby if you need anything. I don't need... I began, but he was already walking away, his message delivered. Inside my apartment, I dropped my purse on the counter and stared at the envelope in my hands. Part of me wanted to tear it open immediately, another part wanted to burn it unopened. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, trying to calm my racing thoughts before slitting the envelope with a kitchen knife. Inside was a single sheet of the same heavy paper, Alessandro's handwriting bold and confident. Emma, circumstances have arisen that require my immediate attention across the country. I regret that our conversation must be delayed longer than I anticipated. Please accept my security detail as a necessary precaution. Recent business disputes have created potential risks that I will not allow to touch you. I've taken the liberty of addressing a more immediate concern. Check your email for details. Consider it not a gift, but an investment in your extraordinary potential. I will return in 5 days. Then, we will speak of futures. Until then, you are in my thoughts. No flowery declarations of feeling. No explicit mentions of danger. Just calm assurance and that same thread of possession that ran through all our interactions. I reread the letter twice, searching for hidden meanings before setting it aside and reaching for my laptop. My email contained a message from an unfamiliar address, sent an hour ago. Dear Ms. Walker, per Mr. Russo's instructions, please find attached documentation confirming payment of the enclosed invoice. All appropriate taxes have been withheld as per state regulations. Your employee status remains unchanged. Respectfully, Thomas Wells' Chief Financial Officer Russo Holdings attached was a PDF, a receipt for $45,000 paid to Hudson Gallery, with the notation, Emma Walker, Professional Development Fund. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. $45,000, more than I made in a year, paid to my employer, but earmarked for me. What was Alessandro playing at? A text message chimed on my phone. Check your other email. Personal account. A. How did he know I had checked my work email first? How did he even have my personal email address? The intrusion into my privacy should have angered me. Instead, a small, traitorous part of me thrilled at being so thoroughly known. My personal email contained another message, this one directly from Alessandro. Emma, the gallery has been instructed to grant you a 3-month paid sabbatical to pursue your artistic development. Your job will be waiting when you return, should you wish to reclaim it. The studio is yours for as long as you desire. The address is below. Security has been arranged. Go there, create without constraint. And when I return, show me what freedom looks like through your eyes. Attached was a lease agreement for a loft space in the city's arts district, the kind of studio I could never afford on my salary, paid in full for 1 year, with my name as the tenant. I sank onto the couch, mind reeling. Alessandro had effectively bought me 3 months of freedom, a space to create, all without asking permission. The presumption was breathtaking, the generosity, overwhelming. The control, terrifying, and yet, The thought of 3 uninterrupted months to paint, to create, to rediscover the artistic voice I'd sacrificed to practicality years ago, it called to something deep within me, a hunger I'd tried to ignore for too long. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. By dawn, I'd made a decision of sorts. I would accept the sabbatical and the studio, not as a commitment to Alessandro or his world, but as an opportunity to reconnect with myself, to create from a place of freedom rather than desperation, to find strength in my own voice before facing the choice he'd laid before me. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, then spent an hour on the phone with Diane, who was surprisingly accommodating after I mentioned the professional development fund that had appeared in the gallery's account. "Mr. Russo explained everything," she said, her tone warmer than I'd ever heard it. "He's quite invested in nurturing local talent. We're happy to support your artistic development, Emma. Take all the time you need." I wondered exactly what everything entailed, what story Alessandro had spun to make my sudden sabbatical seem normal. But I didn't ask, just thanked her and promised to stay in touch. The studio was in a converted warehouse, the kind of space featured in architectural magazines. Soaring ceilings, exposed brick, massive windows that bathed the room in natural light. A note on the industrial steel door directed me to place my thumb on a sleek biometric reader. The lock clicked open at my touch, programmed to recognize me before I even knew the space existed. Inside, I found a painter's paradise, easels of various sizes. A supply cabinet stocked with paints, brushes, canvases, all high-end professional quality, a sitting area with comfortable furniture, a small kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower, even a loft bed tucked into a corner, suggesting the space could be lived in if desired. On a workbench by the windows sat a sealed box with my name on it. Inside was a brand new laptop, a smartphone still in its packaging, and another note in Alessandro's handwriting. "Secure devices. Use them to contact me if needed. The number is programmed. Create without constraint." I set the devices aside, uncomfortable with the implication. But the rest of the studio called to me, the blank canvases, the untouched paints, the possibility contained within these walls. For the first time in years, I felt the stirring of true inspiration. That day, I lost myself in preparation, stretching canvases, organizing supplies, sketching preliminary ideas. By evening, I was covered in charcoal dust and happier than I'd been in months. I returned to my apartment only to pack a bag with clothes and essentials. The studio had everything else I needed. The next morning, I arrived early, eager to begin. The security man, a different one from the previous night, nodded to me from his position across the street. I acknowledged him with a small wave, no longer unsettled by the protection. If anything, it allowed me to focus entirely on my work, knowing the outside world couldn't intrude. Days blurred together as I fell into a rhythm of creation. I painted from dawn until my eyes could no longer focus, stopping only for quick meals and brief naps on the loft bed. The work poured out of me, cityscape after cityscape, but transformed through memory and emotion. The anonymous urban canyons I'd always painted now contained shadows that might be figures, windows that hinted at stories within, edges softened by the possibility of connection. On the 4th day, I received a text on the new phone. Progress? No signature, but none was needed. I hesitated, then snapped a photo of the canvas I was working on. A nighttime scene of the city as seen from above, lights glimmering like fallen stars, with a single illuminated window in the foreground suggesting warmth amid the vastness. I sent it without comment. His response came minutes later. Beautiful, like seeing through your eyes. No pressure to respond, no questions about my decision regarding his offer. Just appreciation for the work itself. Something eased in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I was carrying. That night, I dreamed of Alessandro. Not the dangerous businessman or even the passionate lover, but simply a man watching me paint with quiet understanding in his eyes. I woke with tears on my cheeks, unsure why. On the 5th day, the day Alessandro was supposed to return, I found myself checking the phone compulsively. No messages came. I painted furiously, channeling my anxiety into the canvas, colors darker and strokes more aggressive than previous days. By nightfall, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. I showered in the studio bathroom, letting hot water sluice away paint and tension, then collapsed onto the loft bed without bothering to return to my apartment. The security detail would report my whereabouts. Of that, I had no doubt. I woke to the soft click of the studio door. The space was dark except for a small lamp I'd left on near the sitting area, casting long shadows across the floor. For a moment I thought I'd imagined the sound. Then a figure stepped into the pool of light. Alessandro. He looked different, harder, more dangerous than I remembered. A fresh cut marked his cheekbone, not yet healed. His customary suit was immaculate as always, but he held himself with a new tension, like a predator scenting danger. Emma. My name in his mouth was both greeting and claim. I sat up, suddenly conscious of my tank top and sleep shorts, my damp hair twisted into a messy knot. You're back. I said I would be. He moved further into the studio, his gaze taking in the canvases leaning against walls, the organized chaos of my creative process. You've been productive. I searched for the right word. Free. Something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, perhaps. Good. He stopped at the largest canvas, studying the cityscape with its single illuminated window. Is this how you see it? The city? It's how I see it now, I admitted, climbing down from the loft. The concrete floor was cool against my bare feet as I approached him. Before, everything was sharp edges and empty spaces. Now there's possibility. Alessandro turned to me, his dark eyes intent. And us? Do you see possibility there as well? The question I'd been avoiding for days, laid bare with characteristic directness. I took a deep breath, gathering courage. I see danger, I said honestly. I see complications and compromises and things I don't fully understand. I moved closer, until I could feel the heat of him across the small space that separated us. But yes, I see possibility too. His expression remained guarded. You've had time to consider my offer. Not enough time, I countered. A week doesn't erase a lifetime of caution, Alessandro. I can't just leap into your world without understanding what it truly means. What more do you need to understand? A hint of frustration edged his voice. I've shown you what I can give you. Security. Freedom to create. A life without the constraints that have held you back. You've shown me the benefits, I agreed. But not the cost. Not the truth about who you are, what you do, what would be expected of me. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving mine. Then he nodded once, a decision made. Very well. Truth. He guided me to the sitting area, settling beside me on the sofa close enough that our knees touched. Even this casual contact sent warmth spiraling through me. My family controls significant interests across the East Coast, he began, his voice measured. Shipping, construction, waste management, private banking. Some legal, some less so. My father built an empire through force of will and strategic alliances. When he died 3 years ago, I inherited not just his businesses but his enemies. I listened without interrupting as Alessandro outlined the reality of his world, territory disputes with rival families, corrupt officials on payroll, the constant vigilance required to maintain power and protect what was his. He spoke of violence as a necessary tool, of loyalty as the highest virtue, of a code of honor that operated outside the law but was no less binding. The threat that called me away, he continued, was an attempt by the Cabrini family to move on one of our operations in Miami, an incursion that required decisive response. His eyes held mine, unflinching. I won't pretend my hands are clean, Emma. I've done things that would horrify you. I will do more if necessary to protect what's mine. And that would include me? I asked softly. If I accept your offer, I become something to be protected. A weakness others could exploit. A strength, he corrected. Something worth fighting for. But yes, you would be under my protection always. It would be known that to touch you is to invite my full retribution. The possessiveness in his voice should have repelled me. Instead, it sent a shiver of something like desire down my spine. And what would you expect from me in return? Blind obedience? Looking the other way when business requires things I can't condone? Alessandro's hand found mine, his touch gentle despite the hardness in his eyes. I would expect loyalty and discretion. I would not ask you to participate in aspects of my business that trouble your conscience. Your world would be this. He gestured to the studio, the canvases. Creation, beauty, the life of the mind. I would keep the darkness separate. But it would always be there, I said. The knowledge of what pays for all this, yes. No excuses, no justification. Just honesty. I stood, needing distance to think. I don't know if I can do that, Alessandro. Live in a bubble of willful ignorance while you do what you do. He rose as well, closing the distance between us. Then don't. Know me, all of me, question me, challenge me. But do it at my side, not from a distance. As what? Your mistress? Your wife? The words escaped before I could stop them. Alessandro's eyes darkened. As my partner, my equal in all things that matter. His hand came up to cut my cheek. Eventually, yes, as my wife. I am possessive of what I value, Emma. I make no apologies for wanting to bind you to me in all ways possible. The raw honesty of his declaration stole my breath. This dangerous, powerful man was offering me everything. Security, freedom, passion, a future unbound by financial constraints. All I had to do was accept his world with all its shadows. I need you to understand something, I said, covering his hand with mine. If I choose this, choose you, I won't be kept in a gilded cage. I won't look away from uncomfortable truths or stop questioning when something seems wrong. A smile ghosted across his lips. I would expect nothing less. Your spirit, your integrity, these are what drew me to you. And if someday those qualities put us at odds, if my conscience can't reconcile with your choices, then we will face that day together, he said simply. I don't ask for blind faith, Emma. Just the chance to build something worthy of your trust. I studied his face, the cut on his cheekbone, the intensity in his eyes, the slight softening of his mouth when he looked at me. A man of violence and power, yes. But also a man who had seen something in me worth nurturing when I'd all but given up on myself. I can't promise forever right now, I said finally. But I can promise to try, to see where this leads, to give us a real chance. Relief and triumph flashed across Alessandro's features. He pulled me against him, one hand cradling the back of my head as his lips found mine in a kiss that felt like claiming and surrender all at once. That's all I ask, he murmured against my mouth. Time to show you that our worlds can merge into something stronger than either alone. I let myself melt into his embrace, the decision made not with a dramatic leap, but with a series of small steps that had led inevitably to this moment. I didn't know what the future held, what compromises would be required, what challenges we would face, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, poised on the edge of a life I'd never imagined possible. As dawn broke over the city, painting the studio in hues of gold and amber, Alessandro and I stood before my latest canvas, a cityscape where light and shadow balanced in perfect tension, neither dominating the other. His arm around my waist was both support and possession, my body leaning into his strength even as my mind charted its own course. Beautiful, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. Like the artist herself, I turned in his arms, meeting his gaze directly. I'm choosing this, I said with quiet certainty. I'm choosing you, but I'm also choosing myself. The artist I've always wanted to be, the woman I'm becoming. They have to coexist. Alessandro's eyes gleamed with something that might have been pride. They will. I promise you that. And in that moment, standing in the light of a new day, surrounded by the fruits of my newfound creative freedom, I believed him. Our worlds, light and shadow, creation and protection, independence and belonging, could merge into something stronger than either alone. I had mistaken him for a simple blind date, an ordinary man. He had proven to be anything but, and now, I was stepping willingly into his extraordinary world, eyes wide open, heart both trembling and resolute. Whatever came next, we would face it together, the gallery assistant and the Mafia boss, finding possibility in the most unexpected of meetings.